Came across this today as well. There's been a story that's been getting a lot of been percolating in mainstream media. Wheaton College, that's out in Illinois, put on leave one of its professors because she was walking around with Islamic headdress, that is, the scarf that the women wear. And she claims that this just shows you how bigoted and racist the college administration happens to be. Great defense of Wheaton College today from Eric Erickson. Christian conservatives, he writes, should not shy or be shy about standing up for the college. It's getting attacked after putting Professor, and her name is Lauricia Hawkins, she was put on leave. Public relations campaign waged on her behalf would have you believe she was put on leave for pledging solidarity with Muslims. That is simply, the writer says, not true. And on Facebook, she wrote this: I love my Muslim neighbor because she or he deserves love by virtue of his or her human dignity. All right, I'll go along with that. She wrote in her December 10 post alongside photos of herself wearing the veil. Then she went on to write, I stand in religious solidarity with Muslims because they, like me, a Christian, are people of the book. And as Pope Francis stated last week, we worship the same God. Well, Pope Francis may have made that remark, and some other people may have been making the same remark. However, Wheaton College is not a Catholic school. It is an evangelical Christian college, and it expects its faculty to adhere to the faith standards. And when you're hired, that's what they tell you. Muslims are not people of the book in common understanding among evangelicals, though they do descend from Abraham. And Erickson says they do not worship the same God. According to Islam, Allah neither begets nor is begotten, a line explicitly rejecting the Trinity. So Professor Hawkins and her supporters may wish to distract or may not even care, but Wheaton sets its hiring standards and requires fidelity to the Bible. So in other words, she can't rewrite that. Not according to Wheaton College. 846, Bill Colley with you this morning on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com, 736-0300, or you can email me at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. You're up next and you're on the air.
Good morning.
Morning. Go ahead.
Yes, I was wondering if you've done a story about the Link program being closed.
No, not to my knowledge.
What's that?
I haven't. Sorry. Thank you. Okay, what's she listening to? 847. Telephone number 736-03C. No call screener. You get those types of calls. I had a caller one time. She was a wonderful woman. I got to meet her at a couple of points at a couple of station events. She called me one time on the air and gave an 8-minute rundown of what her recent colonoscopy had been like. And then she called me another day to tell me that she had Lyme disease. And I was thinking, all of your neighbors are listening to this too, but it didn't deter her. And she mentioned she had been housebound with a bad back and she couldn't figure out how she'd gotten bitten by the tick. But she went on to tell me that the doctor expected or suspected it happened when she was taking a bath, which I guess could happen. In summertime, windows are open. You never know. 13 minutes away from 9 o'clock. Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. You're up next. You're on the air.
Good morning, Bill. Welcome back.
Thank you.
I can tell you, you're welcome. It's Obama promised a transformation of this country, and you can see the transformation is from a Christian nation to an Islamic nation. I mean, it's so obvious. Anybody that really takes a realistic look, when you find that you can't teach anything about the Bible or Christianity or Jesus in schools, but in the Common Core curriculum, Islam is being taught all over the country. Parents are protesting it to no avail. You see the military and the FBI, they purged anything that's derogatory toward Islam. And so we can't even look at Facebook that would have prevented these 14 deaths, 21 injured situation. I mean, it's so obvious. And yet, when you look at the source of gun control, refugees, climate change, you have to go to one main villain. It's the United Nations.
Andrew McCarthy was writing last week at National Review, and I tend to think he's a pretty level-headed guy, former federal prosecutor. He was saying the trouble is for American liberals and elites is they can't get their hands around the notion that Islam is more than a religious faith. I mean, it's a governing philosophy. It's a theory of how you conduct your daily life. It's well beyond what we have in the Christian faith. But people tend to say, well, okay, it's a religion, so they tend to equate it with what we, our approach to Christianity, which in this country has become somewhat.
No, it's a theology, Bill. And as Pastor Sharon Hadian said when he was here speaking 4 different times, it's about 85% political and about 15% religion. So I still hear people that should know better. It's a political theology that wants to dominate the world, and we're seeing that being introduced either through jihad or population jihad by bringing in millions of people. Look what's happening in Europe, and you've commented on that. I mean, Europe is being taken over by Islam supporters without firing a shot. Of course, there's the terrorism that brings people into fear, and we're seeing that in this country. But you're absolutely right about the politicians and their spending. It's unbelievable that we put them in there. They say they're going to cut government spending, and yet they turn right around. Mike Simpson, I'm sure, will be glad to vote for this bill. He claims he's a conservative, and yet Paul Ryan is just going along with the New World Order crowd to bring our country down to its knees and make us a third world country with all these energy credits. Somebody's got to pay for that, like you said, and it's us poor middle class that are being squeezed out in favor of world government.
Hey, thank you. And the question then becomes, what middle class? I mean, is there anything left that you could define as middle class any longer? You're up next, and you're on the air on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com.
Good morning.
Morning.
I was calling back. So what was that you said? You haven't done a story about the Link program?
Not me.
Yes, so they're closed. They're what the program is it just kind of...
Well, I'll tell you what, it might be a good issue for another day, but I'm not the town crier, and I'm in the middle of another topic at the moment, so another day perhaps we could pick that up. 736-0300, 736-0300. And, of course, you can drop me an email at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. That's bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. There are a lot of interesting things that go on in this community, and I'm not at all opposed to getting them on the air and having a discussion about them, but it's a lot easier to sort of do that with a little planning and scheduling otherwise than just flying by the seat of our pants, which, I know it might some days sound like that, but I actually map out the entire show before I come walking through the door mornings. That's the way I was taught, and that's the way the radio program directors and consultants who were very successful in my career told me I should be doing it. And I realize sometimes that might throw people off a little bit. It's not that I'm trying to be mean or nasty or anything like that. It's just how the show works. And it pretty much works that way everywhere you go. 8:52, you're up next. You're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story. Good morning.
Yeah, Bill, yesterday I've been doing some work up in Idaho Falls, and yesterday afternoon about 5, I proceeded to drive from Idaho Falls to Pocatello, and I watched a guy pass me, and he thought he was, we have this unbelievable ability in America to think it can never happen to us. And I watched him pass me, and then all of a sudden he broke free. It was just a glaze of ice. But people just don't think it'll happen. And I seen him, he didn't roll, but he went through the median, he spun around. He literally spun back up onto the freeway, almost into the traffic he just left, and then he came to a rest on the side there. And I thought, well, you're as lucky as luck gets. But this is the thing. See, last night when I was at Costco in Pocatello, I kind of jokingly said, well, we were talking about the roads, and I says, yes. And I says, same way with refugees, we don't think it'll happen to us. And I kind of put my finger to my lip like, well, don't say anything because we don't want to offend anybody here in the store, see? And then there was maybe a manager standing there, and he maybe had a look on his face that he didn't approve. I'm a customer, too. I spend a lot of money there. I have a right to say what I want. I didn't say it very loud. Okay, that point being made, in Sweden, the Muslims are putting in people's mailboxes threats. In other words, if you do not conform to our religion or switch over and become a new convert, we are going to proceed with unbelievable heinous acts, including beheading. These are the letters that will be sent to people in Sweden. And I'm telling you,
Well,
if you go ahead, I'm done. I'll hang up.
well, no, thank you much for the call, and I think it's a great analogy that you're making, that, we just go along our daily lives and boom, all of a sudden it hits you, whether it be an accident like that or a shooting in San Bernardino. That poll number that came out this morning that I was looking up at the TV monitor and spotted, when 4 out of 5 Americans, so that has to include a lot of Democrats and liberals too, because the country probably is split in the middle with about 20% who aren't sure, they kind of go back and forth, and then about 40 and 40. So if 80% of the public says that they don't trust the government to get its act together and prevent more of these things from happening, then what good is the government? I mean, that's especially when it comes to the federal government, and on the local level too. Your local sheriff's department works very, very diligently to try and protect you. The sheriff is the highest elected constitutional official in any county where the sheriff is elected. That's, I think, pretty much been the standard since the colonial era and then well into the early days of this republic. But the fact of the matter is, the federal government's its main role really is simply to provide common defense. And if the federal government can't look out for you, and the federal government keeps saying, well, you shouldn't be worried about this, and you shouldn't, you're just a racist if you are. Well, how many more dead bodies do we need piled up before they finally get the message? 4 out of 5 Americans are saying enough. 4 out of 5. What in blazes is wrong with these people? Remember, they were trying to shame people right after the shooting in Los Angeles, saying, well, we need gun control instead. Because, see, that's what they'd rather have. They'd rather take your guns away because the other issue is politically incorrect, and they don't mind hurting your feelings because, you're a bitter clinger. But you don't want to hurt somebody's feelings who came here swinging a scimitar or would like to come here and swing a scimitar. 856, Bill Colley with you on Top Story. A writer by the name of John Grindelski at Crisis Magazine says, the same people who announce that God isn't fixing this are also the ones who want us to use the bad things that happen to good people as an excuse to undermine, if not attack, religious faith. But the funny thing is, they're only attacking the Christian faith, though. At some point, they're not going to be comfortable with the other growing faith that's coming to this country because that has a lot more restrictions, if you will. Christianity is almost libertarian. A wealthy man walked up to Jesus and said, what can I do, to follow you? And he said, well, get rid of everything. The guy said, sorry, can't do that, and walked away. Jesus didn't grab him and say, all right, I'm going to shake you down and take your money, and then you will follow me. There's a huge difference here in the philosophies of these two religions. And lefty still insists on attacking the one that's traditional to this country and the Western world. This writer says the same folks now transfer an analogous blame to politicians by failing to enact anti-gun legislation. Politics is everything, Thomas Mann wrote, and everything is politics. In a postmodern world that denies transcendence, in other words, there is no God. They're not going to have an easy time selling that to the Islamic peoples who are coming here, some of whom, we'll admit, are nice people. But they don't approve of things like same-sex relationships or same-sex marriage. They don't approve of abortion. They have a number of things that they don't approve of. And their approach to it might be a lot harsher than any Christian's approach has ever been. And Lefty just simply refuses to believe that. Lefty seems to believe, well, we can destroy Christianity first, and then don't worry about it. Big government will control these other people. Yeah. Good luck. 858, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. 1 more hour ahead. Do want to remind you, if you'd like to hear the show, and you're struggling to hear the show, you need to give a telephone call to Dr. Christine Pickup, a doctor of audiology at Mount Harrison Audiology in Rupert. She's at 1218 9th Street, Unit number 2. The number, 208-312-0957, or online at mountharrisonaudiology.com. Diabetes and hearing loss are linked, she reminds you. If you or a loved one struggles with diabetes, it could also be affecting your hearing. The inner ear is sensitive to changes in your blood supply. High blood sugars can cause hearing changes, and she reminds you to be sure to have your hearing screened today. We've got news straight ahead from Fox at 9 o'clock on KLIX.